yes, there's can be imbalance or dysfunction, but that can be dealt with in multiple different areas, in multiple different directions that don't have to include anything called conventional psychology or psychiatry or conventional mental health the way that we know it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you pointed out that the normal, right? There is no normal, and if you have no variable, how can you have a constant definition? That's
Exactly.
beautiful. And one of the things that I think is difficult for some people is especially as you know, as we were discussing before with social media and what people are uh, comparing themselves with other people. I'm a parent. I'm guilty of that on occasion with my own kids, and I'm like, oh, I got to stop. I have to make sure I'm looking at my daughters, and even them. Of course, they're very different. So to them, what resonates most with them in the way that I speak with them, or examples that I give them, or my approach to dealing with something that happened with them at school is so different. And I find that this whole idea of um, when you are, as you said, if you are under the impression that something is wrong with you, if you feel that there is something wrong with you, and someone, corroborates that, and you go to someone and they say, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
there's something wrong with you.
depressed."
Yeah.
Or you have trauma, and I had a good friend of mine, Dr. Irene Kopp, on the show a few weeks ago, and she was mentioning that everyone has trauma, and she was
Yeah.
saying everyone has. She called them traumas with a small t. Like there's traumas with a big T that we all look at and we say, "Oh yes, they've been to war and they've seen horrific things. Of course, that's going to have a traumatic experience. They went through traumatic experiences. That's going to have impacts on the way that they see things and the way that they interact and all these things. But all of us have been through what she was calling small t's.
Yeah.
And it's okay. These are things we have to become aware of, but we shouldn't ignore. But to think that we are broken or that there's something wrong with us because we've had some traumatic experiences in our lives, once we allow that trauma or we allow a diagnosis, like you were saying, to become the definition or to become something that we look at and say, well, this is why I'm doing that because
Exactly.
I have this.
Exactly.
And just the idea of, well, you know what, everybody is carrying these things, and if there is a way that we can approach situations out of a broader understanding that these are human experiences, and yes, some people may try to hurt themselves and they need special attention or hurt someone else, but going back to what you said about being heard, it's so important, I think, for people to realize that it's okay to be not okay sometimes. That's a
Exactly.
situation. And sometimes that is exactly what we need. It's not what we want. It's not
Exactly.
what we want to experience. We're not enjoying it. But
Right.
if we don't have an opportunity sometimes to process these things, and of course, not saying that everyone should go in a corner and just deal with their problems. Of course, get help, get assistance, have someone to speak with, like you were saying, have an opportunity to be heard. It's so important to have those opportunities. And I think it's also very empowering for individuals if they understand that I am okay. Something happened to me or something is happening to me that I don't like, but I as a person, this is who a person is. They go through these things, and I don't need the thing that I want to avoid, if at all possible, is having some of my personality taken away from me by being on certain medications or things like that, which can then of course dull or make it even more difficult for them to actually grow through those experiences, because those feelings and emotions and the opportunity to process is being dulled and diminished as well. So
Yeah.
I applaud you for what you're doing. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. There, and some of these medicines, it's kind of well known now that some of these medicines dull us, but some of them actually make us too excited as well. So they just mess with our equilibrium.
Yeah.
You're pointing to a couple things that come to mind. Number one, like, why do we take on these diagnoses in the first place? Why, psychiatry is a funny field. It's like the only field out there in subspecialty in all of medicine where if you tell someone that they're okay, they get furious.